back with that. Stay tuned. You ready?
As ready as I'm going to be.
No, okay. I yield to the gentle lady from the great state of Texas, the ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Hauser, thank you so much for your service. I do want to make sure that we are clear on your credentials because you actually have them. I have that you were the Assistant Director of Legislative Affairs at Homeland Security, correct?
At one time, yes, ma'am, about 15 years ago.
You were Deputy Chief of Staff at Homeland as well?
Yes, ma'am.
You served as a Senior Advisor to the Commission as Homeland's Custom and Border Protections,
Yes, ma'am.
as well as you recently served as the Chief of Staff for ICE.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you've done a few things.
I'm also a combat veteran. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, thank you for your service in all ways. Here, listen, I have a series of issues of what's going on because I will say that the Republicans were right. Democrats lost on immigration. When you look at all the polling, when you talk to people, they lost on immigration. And frankly, I am concerned that we did not have conversations that went beyond just talking about the humanity, because there are people that literally don't care about humanity, which is why we are able to have this administration doing the things that they're doing. Talking about the fact that border crossings are down 95%, well, I don't know if I can trust that number or not. You know why? Because first of all, they've been going out, they've been firing all of the persons that usually deal with data, science, and facts all over in all agencies, in addition to the fact that even if that is a real number, we don't know if they got to that number just because, well, this is a lawless administration that is consistently in violation of people's constitutional rights, the Constitution in and of itself, court orders. So we can't really explain exactly why and how, even if that is true. And at some point in time, you have to say there is a balancing test. Either we are going to follow the law fully or we're not at all. And frankly, what I've seen out of this administration is that they don't want to follow the law. But there is something that you said in your opening remarks that really stuck with me. There was a line that I wrote down. You said, line cooks and landscapers. Now, I have talked to those that are in construction. I have talked to those that are farmers. I have talked to a lot of people that have said that because of the reckless acts of so many of these ICE agents, they can't even get their workers to show up to work because of what they're doing. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong. As somebody that practiced criminal law, I never saw that we needed ICE to go and arrest somebody, say, for murder. Is ICE the only agency that has the authority to arrest somebody, say, if they go out and commit murder?
No, ma'am, they're not. But
what about aggravated robbery?
No, ma'am.
What about rape?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so in fact, 9 times out of 10, the primary arresting agency when it comes to, say, committing a crime such as aggravated robbery, rape, murder, would that be ICE? Would that be the primary arresting and investigatory agency to do that in the first place?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page because I get a little confused sometimes when we're around here. Now, we have talked about a lot of the kind of back and forth between the branches. And this idea of checks and balances seems to escape certain folk in the chamber. And so I really want to ask you just a couple of questions to make sure I'm not the one that has lost my marbles. Who has the right to conduct oversight? Or let me ask you this way. Does Congress have the power to conduct federal oversight over detention facilities?
Yes, ma'am, and quite frankly, a bit of confusion that I've been hearing today. Oversight by Congress is, of course, mandated by law, but additionally, oversight also not only in the immigration space protects the migrants, but also protects law enforcement and through public safety in making sure they have the resources they need. In my position, over 15 years at the department, I oversaw hundreds of visits by congressional members, advocacy groups, immigration groups, law enforcement groups, and in no way did I ever see the sort of situation that we saw in Delaney Hall where there was a powder keg driven by the political theater being driven by the White House.
That's exactly right. And that's actually why I wanted to make sure I talked about the fact that you had credentials and you've actually been in this space. That was not normal. And the idea that they would somehow say that it's their colleagues that were the ones that were driving it, which is why I made sure that I showed video footage of Representative McIver very calmly telling them why she was there. And frankly, it is sad that we do have to go through this kind of political theater because, listen, we all know what it is. That's why they hired everybody from Fox News, because all they trying to do is put on for a show. This is not the Apprentice show. This is supposed to be about the American people, and I want us to start to refocus our attention on the American people and stop demonizing every daggone person that ends up in custody of ICE, because they are not necessarily demons just because ICE decided to round them up. So thank you for your testimony.
Can I answer that question?
No. The gentle lady yields back. The committee will be in order. I understand your enthusiasm, but we have rules in the way we run the committee for both sides of the aisle. With that being said, I will recognize the gentleman from the great state of Ohio, the chairman of the whole Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mikowski, who are all these people in ICE detention facilities that Democrats went on the street? Who are these folks? Are they all just apple pie asylum-seeking folks, or who else might be in there?
Sir, thank you for the question. First and foremost, they're immigration law violators. They violated the basic laws, the immigration laws that are codified by Congress. I'll say it again.
So they broke the law.
Yes, sir. That's
one.
first and foremost. They're not a United States citizen.
Any of them violent? In addition to breaking the law, any of them violent people inside these detention centers?
Absolutely, sir.
Any of them gang members?
Absolutely, sir.
Any of them members of MS-13?
Absolutely, sir.
Any of them Trinity Aragua gang members?
Again, sir, yes.
So they're not just all warm and fuzzy folks that the Democrats went out on the street, right? They're bad guys. Some of them are bad guys, really bad guys. Now, some of them are just asylum seekers, but some of them are really bad guys. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, it's fair to say.
Yeah, because you worked in these facilities, is that right?
I've worked in them, sir, yes.
You know them better than anyone in this hearing room. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and before they go to detention, they have to get apprehended somewhere. They have to get arrested or taken into custody by ICE. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You got to get them somewhere. You know, maybe it's on the border, maybe it's somewhere else. But you have to get them before you take them to the ICE detention facility.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, did you ever think that you would see Democrat mayors in all kinds of urban areas around this country and Democrat city councils pass resolutions say, don't work with ICE when they come to apprehend gang members, bad guys, MS-13 violent offenders? Did you ever think you'd see that?
Not here in the United States, sir.
But that's exactly what's happening around the country, isn't it?
Yes, sir. In my home state of New Jersey, that's fact.
Yeah, it's happening everywhere. New Jersey, Denver, Boston, you name it. It's happening. And did you ever think you'd see governors and state legislatures do the same thing and say, you know what, our whole darn state is going to be a sanctuary state. Don't work with ICE when they're coming to enforce the law. Did you ever think you'd see that?
No, sir.
Did you ever think you would see judges in their chambers tell the bad guy, hey, talk to his lawyer, hey, slip out the back door because the ICE agents are coming in the front door to enforce federal law? Did you ever think you'd see that?
No, sir.
And did you ever think you would see what happened last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say, in New Jersey? Did you ever think you'd see members of Congress engage in that kind of behavior?
Sir, after what I witnessed in 2018, yes, in New York City, I didn't put it past anybody, but I find that behavior to be absurd.
Well, in other words, Mr. McCall, it's gotten so bad, nothing surprises you now with what the left's going to do.
Nothing, sir.
I know, and that's where the American people are, and that's why they appreciate what the Trump administration is doing. Why is it better to arrest people at the jails or at the courthouse, Mr. Mikowski, than it is out on the street? Why is that better?
I believe my colleague had touched on it, but it's much safer for the alien, the person involved, and it's also safer for the general public. Most importantly, the officers. The rule of thumb is safety
it's safer
first.
for everyone, right?
Yes, sir.
It's safer for everyone. Safer for the migrant, safer for law enforcement, safer for the general public, because you don't want to happen what has happened already because of the crazy left-wing policies that some of these cities and states and now judges have. When you could send two, it's cheaper for the taxpayers. Instead of sending 6 guys to arrest him on the street, you can send 2 guys to get him at the courthouse or at the jail. But that side says no. We're for the sanctuary policies. We're for making it tougher on law enforcement. We're for endangering the community. We're for making it tougher on the migrant and going out and arresting them on the street. Really, one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Would you agree, Mr. Murkowski?
Yes, sir. And to your point, we talk about sanctuary cities, and my colleague was mentioning like deportation officers need to be on the street. Imagine if they would just honor detainers, they rolled over into custody, and I could send people over there to pick them up in a facility, not taking the officers away from an enforcement action. Okay, so deportation officers are very vital.
Yes.
And you know, the peaceful transfer from one facility to the other is just common sense, sir.
No, we call that, in economics, you call that opportunity cost, right? Because it's safer for the officer, safer for the public, safer for the migrant, but it also, when you have to send 6 of them out on the street, there's the opportunity lost that you now have 4 extra agents there when they could be out doing other good work protecting the public. That's how dumb, there's no other word for it, how dumb this whole sanctuary policy is. Thank you for your work.
The chairman from Ohio yields back. I recognize the gentleman, the ranking member from the great state of Maryland, Mr. Raskin.
And thank you, Chairman Van Drew. Even ICE and the Department of Homeland Security recognize that, quote, any member of Congress has the right to show up for an inspection at one of our facilities in their oversight capability. Mr. Hauser, is that the general policy that you know?
Yes, sir.
Okay. ICE has also, along with lots of other parts of the administration, has been repudiated by the federal judiciary, including the Supreme Court. There are now more than 160 preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders that have been entered by federal judges, Republican appointees, Democratic appointees against a reign of lawlessness and complete disregard for the Constitution. President Trump has had to be instructed to bring back a man who the Department of Justice admitted had been deported due to an administrative error. He was sent to a torturer's prison in El Salvador due to what they confessed was administrative error. Do you agree that ICE has been violating the law repeatedly over the last few months?
Sir, I would say the administration and the White House has been directing lawless action.
The U.S. Supreme Court even had to issue an emergency order at 1 in the morning on April 19th to stop an unlawful attempt by the administration to conduct a mass deportation of Venezuelans without any due process whatsoever. They told them to turn the vans and the buses around. There had been no hearings, no opportunity to be represented, no opportunity to hear even the charges against them, no court orders. And just this last Friday, the Supreme Court upheld this ban on deportations, reaffirming once again that every immigrant in the country is entitled to due process. The 2 most beautiful words in the English language. It's due process that separates our rights and freedoms from arbitrary power by the state. And if you have a single libertarian bone in your body, you will understand what due process is all about. Now, why is congressional oversight important, Mr. Hauser, if the courts are there as a backstop against lawlessness by an executive branch?
Sir, Congress's role, especially in immigration enforcement, is extremely critical for just the simple fact that we have tens of thousands of human beings in custody. And their care and the carrying out of our public safety and our law enforcement operations need critical oversight and accountability.
So when you were chief of staff at ICE, how many congressional delegations would you say happened at ICE facilities?
Hundreds, sir. And as we've all talked about, we saw large demands and migratory flow to the border. We were dealing with bipartisan, visits continuously week after
These were
week.
Democrats and Republicans
Yes,
together coming to visit. So there's nothing strange about members of Congress doing it. Both parties have done it, right?
No, sir.
Did anything like what just occurred at Delaney Hall, where members of Congress were pushed and manhandled and threatened with arrest, and there was a melee, did anything like that ever happen in your experience?
No, sir. And what I saw there was sort of this distilling of what I consider the direction of enforcement, immigration enforcement, and the political theater of this. That was the outcome that some people in the White House wanted. And they're putting that pressure both on the non-migrants that are non-criminal, that don't have final order removal, and also on the ICE officers.
Well, you mentioned the phrase political theater several times, and that's interesting to me because I remember at the end of the Biden administration when there was a struggle to get the two parties together and there was agreement, a bipartisan agreement on legislation at the border. And you had the most conservative Republicans in the Senate hailing it and saying it's a huge breakthrough. You had liberal Democrats getting behind it, and everybody was saying, well, it's not perfect, but we'll do this. And it was sailing through the Senate, it's coming over to the House, and then President Trump, former President Trump at that point, announced he was totally opposed to it. He didn't want border legislation. He wanted a border crisis to run against. In other words, he wanted political theater. I wonder, was that your perception of that same episode?
Absolutely, sir. And when you watch the videos of what happened at Delaney Hall, ICE officers are trained from the beginning of when they enter the agency on assessing threat and risk. And clearly, and they sort of apply that threat and risk to what they carry out in operations. And I believe everybody on this panel would agree that then they allowed the Congresswoman to then enter the facility and take the tour. So the idea that there was outside political pressure or influence directed at ICE agents and that created this powder keg of what happened there is pretty clear and logical to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time's up.
I thank the ranking member. I am going to yield 5 minutes to myself.